Welcome, everyone, to Everyday Therapy, a podcast with the goal of empowering you to become the best version of yourself. We hope to meet you wherever you may be on your journey to mental health and well-being, whether you're just starting out or you are well-versed. My name is Krista Overson. I'm a licensed therapist and clinical site director, and I'm joined by my excellent co-host, Brett Cushing, also a licensed therapist and clinical director. This is the official podcast of Nystrom & Associates, one of the largest behavioral health companies in the country. If you or someone you love is struggling with their mental health, Nystrom has over 50 clinics with dedicated helpers. Visit us at nystromcounseling.com. Welcome back, Brett.
Hey, good to be back. Thank you, Krista.
Yeah.
We do have to take that most excellent part of the intro
That's
out.
the best part. No. We're not taking it out. We're just switching out the word. Sometimes it's excellent. Sometimes it's awesome.
Okay.
Sometimes it's amazing.
Yeah, I like awesome better.
You like awesome better? You don't like excellent?
Dude, yeah.
Dude, most excellent.
Well, hey, we're back, and we are really excited. We do have a special guest that we'll be introducing here in a moment, a client of Nystrom & Associates, Lindsay. And, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about a certain kind of trauma, namely sexual trauma today.
Yes.
So it's kind of a big topic.
Super big, super relevant, actually.
Yes. I think you even have some stats on that.
It's startling and sobering, really, when we think about how prevalent sexual assault is. Nationwide, one stat I came across is that nationwide, 81% of women, 43% of men report experiencing some form of sexual harassment and or assault in their lifetime. It's 81% for women, 43% for men.
Wow.
And I also came across that an estimated 1 in 5 women and a quarter of men in the United States have experienced unwelcome or forceful sexual contact. And that's... These stats, I think, when we think about it, this is only what's reported.
Right.
A lot of people don't even report this
true.
because of so much shame that people feel attached to this.
Yep.
So it's even more so. And I think, 43% of men, it's got to be a lot higher than that in my estimation, because men are even less socialized to talk about this when it happens.
Yep.
What's been your experience, in working with clients who have experienced sexual trauma, rape? What have you noticed?
Oh, that's a greght question. I've noticed several things. I guess one note too on childhood sexual abuse is this stat I heard a long time ago, so maybe even out of date by now. But I think it was something like 1 in 4 women and 1 in 3 men, or maybe the other way around.
Yeah, no, that sounds
where
about right.
the prevalence of childhood sexual abuse, and that most childhood sexual abuse happens within the family system or someone that the child knows. So all that to say, I think there is so much shame around sexual trauma, and I have found that I could be working with a certain client for quite a while, like a year or more before they share this with me. And I never hold it against them or take it personally.
Well, sure. Yeah.
It's more just like I always feel honored when they share that with me.
Why is that?
I think because it does take such vulnerability. Because back to your question of what my experience has been, there's so much shame in it. And there's so much I think even after it's been acknowledged, I think there's still the element of, did I somehow cause this? Was I at fault? What should I have done differently? And I think that's... there's hesitation to share about it, to talk about it. It just opens up this can of worms.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I don't often find out about it till later. And then that's why I feel honored, because it's like, wow, that's a big thing to share and to trust me with that information.
To trust you
right?
with it, right.
That I'm not going to judge you, that I'm going to be here for you. I'm not going to think anything different of you, right? So
yeah,
has that been your experience?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
The shame is so incredibly powerful, devastating, and kind of what I've experienced with so many clients, not all, but with many who have been survivors of sexual assault and rape, is that, or those incidents kind of robs the person of their soul. And I've heard people say that, and I've seen that, and it really speaks to how powerfully impactful this is.
Yes.
And even if people who are listening haven't experienced this, you have people in your life who have experienced it and probably haven't said anything. And I wouldn't be surprised if you look at that person at times and say, what is wrong with them? And we always kind of tend to end the podcast sometimes saying we hopefully can look at people and not ask, what's their problem?
Yes.
We can ask, I wonder what happened.
Exactly.
And I think people are struggling with this either themselves or they have loved ones that unbeknownst to them who have experienced this, and we don't always understand. So we're hoping today that we're going to shed a lot of light on this, and it probably will be a two-parter, I'm guessing, because we got a lot to cover.
So. Yeah, exactly. And maybe we could just spend a minute talking about why did we want to have someone come on to the podcast about someone who's been through these things, right? Like what kind of our thought process, right?
Absolutely.
I know for me, it's kind of, I want there to be hope for people, right? People listening, that there is help and that you can work through even the most horrible things, right?
Yeah.
How about yourself?
That's it, because many people are, there is no hope. I have to live with this, and I have to live with the shame and the secret for the rest of my life.
Right.
And it's too devastating to think about sharing this. So I agree 100% with the hope. Also, our mission is to empower people to become their best version of themselves. We can't do that if we're not addressing this past trauma that's occurred.
Right.
So the hope and the change aspect is kind of what we're looking at for the purpose. And with Lindsay joining us today, she has some extensive trauma, and the idea is that people are listening and they're going to hear her story and they're going to hopefully say, wow, that happened to her, and look what she was able to do. What happened to me might even be just a fraction of that. And if she can move on and find hope and healing and newness of life, I can too. So that's really why we want to do this today.
Absolutely. So, and just one more note just to the listeners, listen with care. If you have experienced something in your past and you're not sure how you're going to respond to hearing about, someone else's story, just be aware of that. And there's certainly help out there, but just kind of be aware that it could bring some things up for you if you have experienced that.
Great word. Thank you for mentioning that.
Of course.
And Lindsay, thank you for joining us today on this very important topic. So, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Thank you for your courage that you displayed going through all the therapy you've done and for sharing it today with others.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to tell my story and just share what really can happen if you dedicate yourself to therapy and moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, it is kind of one step at a time.
Yeah.
So why don't we start off, and why don't you share with us a little bit of the sexual trauma that you've experienced in your life?
It started at a younger age, younger teen years, with just someone I didn't know, just walking with my sister to the store. A gentleman was in his vehicle, stopped and asked my sister and I for directions, and he was pleasuring himself. And my sister and I, he asked us to get closer to the car, and we saw it. He intentionally wanted us to witness what he was doing. That affected me severely. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was sleepy. I was in my sister's room, sleeping on her floor for a month at least. So when I could sleep, it'd be for like maybe an hour or so at a time.
And that was early teens?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I was 12, maybe 13.
Okay. And then from there?
From there, it went, when I was a freshman in high school, I started dating a senior. And before he turned 18, it was the pressure to have sex because he was going to become an adult. And I was about to turn 14. And so it was that pressure that we had to have sex before he was an adult, even though I wasn't comfortable with it. It was, we were dating, it was to happen.
Yep.
And because it was pressure, I felt we were dating, I had to give in.
Sure.
And so I did.
You were
exactly.
only what, 13 you said?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
No, that's super young to try to make that decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, of course, I gave in. And I wasn't necessarily comfortable with it, obviously, at first. And then it just kind of grew into, this is what was expected. This is what it was. And then I was fine with it. But then I recognized that he was sleeping with other younger girls.
Okay.
And I obviously didn't appreciate that and broke up with them. And
Okay.
So I had enough respect for myself, even though he didn't have respect for me.
Right. Good point.
Good.
So then from there, you had more experiences. This is really just the tip of the iceberg. So what then?
From there, it then poured into, I became friends with I was 15 and I became friends with a 20-year-old, and he began to rape me. And the threats began, brainwashing, the gaslighting, brainwashing, harassment, stalking. If you tell anyone, I'm going to do this. He started breaking into my parents' home, stealing.
Wow.
Threatening your family, right?
Threatening. He even went to the extent of spreading flyers, hundreds of flyers up and down my street in front of my high school that had sayings that I had like STDs, other sayings that were just crude sayings.
Yep.
So this was an aspect, too, of domestic violence because, and we've talked about that, we don't have time to get into that, but there was rape occurring within this broader context of a domestic violent relationship where someone's trying to just dominate and control
that intimidation.
Yes.
And not just trying to completely suppress who you are as a human being and intimidate you to the point that you become nothing.
Yes.
And your family doesn't understand anything that's going on, but all this chaos is going on around you.
Yep.
And you are in such fear of what's going to happen to you, your family, that you can't even tell your family. The cops are involved because your family has no clue what's going on, but you can't even tell the cops. Because you're afraid that he's going to kill your family, because he's threatened to kill even your grandparents.
Wow.
And you're feeling there's no way out.
Exactly.
Well, how did this culminate then? Like, this went on for a number of years, and
so what ended up happening is I eventually got pregnant. I'm 18, pregnant. I graduated high school 6 months early. Moved to Texas with this man because I knew now I'm pregnant. He's not only going to be dominant over me, it's also going to be over my child.
Right.
I can no longer be in this state because it's going to be complete chaos over everything.
Sure.
His family was moving to Texas. So the best thing that I felt at that time was to move. So we did, and it really only got worse from there because then I had no support, no help or anything. So then he just became even more controlling, more dominant over everything, home life, anything. So we had one vehicle. So then that meant I drove him to work, would go home, drive back for his lunch, go back home, drive back to pick him up, go back home. So it was, he was in control of everything, but I had to do everything.
Ooh, that's
if
a really
that
good
makes
way to
sense.
put that. Yeah.
Right.
So it was his way of controlling everything, but I had to do everything.
That's a really powerful statement.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so then we don't have time to get into that, but I just want people to understand a little more of the extent. So you were able to get out of that relationship,
which is amazing in its own right.
That's
which
a whole
was
other story.
extremely difficult to do. Right.
Sure.
Now, I think it's accurate to say you were essentially kidnapped at another time in your life too, right? Can you just share briefly about that?
So I became chronically ill, and my family had to had to come and move me from out of state back here so they could care for me because I could, about 10 years ago, I could barely walk. My disease took me to such a low place. So they brought me back here and started caring for me. And what happened was I got to this place where cognitively I had such a decline where I felt, why is my family caring for me? I feel so bad that they're doing everything for me. I need to do something. You know, I'm still young enough that I can date. I can find somebody to be happy with. You know, there's somebody.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I thought, online dating, everybody does it. You could, online dating, no. So I met a few people, talked, whatever, met one guy. He came up from Chicago, met him. I went down there a few times. He came up here a few times. But the last time I went down there to visit with him, it got awkward. He had leased a home. I helped him move his belongings in, purchase some belongings, set up the house.
Yeah.
I was only supposed to stay a week. When the week was up, he was supposed to, I paid to go there. He was going to pay to send me back.
Yeah.
And when it was time, he didn't want to send me back.
Uh-oh.
He's like, well, we'll send you next week. Didn't send me. And my dad was financially supporting me because I couldn't work.
Sure.
So I'm like, this wasn't the deal. Okay, so I'm going to wait another week.
Sure.
We'll see.
Yep.
Well, eventually it came up to about a month, right? He had put up cameras in every room.
Oh my goodness.
Video, like recording everything, acting weird. He had a maintenance guy come in the home and he literally put up the iPad and recorded the maintenance guy fixing the hot water heater.
Yeah, so he was controlling everything.
He was literally controlling every aspect of what was going on in the home. So with the trauma from my past, now put in this situation of, I need to go home.
Yep.
I came with, 3 weeks worth of medication. I'm on week 3.
Oh no.
Moving into week 4. Now I don't have any medication left. I'm starting to throw up because I can't just quit my medications with all my diseases.
No.
So I said, you need to put me on a plane right now.
Yeah.
I've been throwing up for 4 days. So finally, he took me to the airport. I acted like everything was fine between him and I,
just trying to get out of it.
Everything.
Playing it cool.
And that's what I did the entire month I was there when he wouldn't just send me home. And he was acting weird and everything.
Yeah, highly traumatic. That's why I said it sounds kind of like, a kidnapping, really, because you were not alled to leave. You didn't have the capacity.
I didn't have a vehicle to just drive myself to the airport.
You were like
chronic
a prisoner.
Health issues. Yeah, prisoner is a good word.
Yeah.
So then I know, because I want to get into also kind of how you've been able to get through all this. I know there were 2 other occasions where you had also experienced a rape by 2 different men. And this kind of paints, I think, the picture of the extent of the trauma that you'd gone through. And I almost feel bad, like I don't want to just gloss over that. And yet I want to give people hope, and so people are hearing that, there's been extensive sexual trauma as well as domestic violence. And you develop some serious health problems on top of this.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the question I think many people would be asking and wondering is, why did you stay in these relationships then?
Fear. fear of the abuse I had already endured. And if I were to try and leave, not only what would happen to me, what would happen to my child, my family.
Yep.
Because if what had already happened to me has happened, and they have such a mental twist and mental wrap around me, that ownership of they'll do this to me, and I want to get away, and I've already tried, and this has happened to me. They've stalked me, they've harassed me financially, broken into my bank account and wiped it out. They've stolen my identity. What else will they do to me?
If they've done that, right.
What else are they capable of? They've already threatened to kill my grandparents.
Wow. I'm so glad you asked that, Brett, too, because that question, I think, and Lindsay, you can probably speak to this too, that question is such a common fear, I think, when survivors do open up and share about their trauma. That's a fear, is that people are going to be like, well, why did you stay? Right? Like, and I think you very intentionally asked that question to address that concern, because it's complicated, right? Just the emotional manipulation that happens, the fear mongering, I mean, threats on loved ones' lives, right? And then when you have previous trauma, your whole worldview is skewed by what you've been through before. So that's, I mean, I'm so glad that came up.
People don't realize when they're involved in a domestic violent kind of relationship where the person is totally dominating and controlling the other. And it's not just women. 1 in 9 men experience this too. That people don't understand that when like you're alluding to and saying quite clearly, Lindsay, when a person leaves that's when they are in most danger, and homicide is definitely something that happens. So
totally.
And I think to your point too, Krista, is that we need to be really cautious. To avoid simple answers to complex traumatic situations. Well, you should have just left. What a simple answer, and it really is an insult to the extent of the trauma.
Right. Anybody leaving these situations, they have to have a plan, a safe exit strategy. They cannot just up and leave, especially if they have children. They just can't. There is too much harm to them, their family, if they've already endured some type of abuse. And that is exactly why they stay. And I understand that it is extremely confusing to people who have not endured it or have not had family that they've expressed, had these conversations with, have not seen it with their own eyes. But there is extreme danger in these relationships, and to exit them, there's even more danger because these individuals are so tightly wrapped around this person, they believe they own you.
Right.
They believe that you are stamped as their property and you should never leave their sight.
Right. It reminds me of like when you have to deactivate a bomb or something, and you have to go in and there's all the wires. Like you have to do it strategically. You have to know which wire to clip when, right? It's like an extraction.
But not just that. You have to go in wearing the entire suit. You have to be safe about it.
Right.
You can't just go in willy-nilly and just go in with the tools.
Right.
You have to go in with a safety plan.
And you probably have to play it off like you're not leaving.
Like you're all cool.
Like when you're at the airport with the one guy and you were kind of like, okay, everything's normal because I'm trying to get on this plane.
You give him the hug, the kiss on the cheek. I'll see you soon. And he came and showed up at my house unexpected like 2 weeks later.
Wow.
That's right.
Wow.
So maybe we'll ask one more question, and then we're going to ask you, like, why does this happen to people in your estimation and experience? And then we're going to probably stop there, and then we're going to get into our next podcast with Lindsay and talk about things like sexual trauma and responses that people have, the effects of it, how therapy helps, things like that, so we can really provide tangible hope that we were touching on. Mm-hmm. But first, before we end today, why don't we let you speak to that, Lindsay? Why does this happen to people?
I wish I could say I knew 100% why, but I think there are multiple different reasons. I think it could be underlying mental health issues for some people. I think for other people, they see something pretty, something they like, it's attractive, they want it. I think there are other people who feel like they've been blown off by the world. Then they see something and it's like a magnet.
Right.
They don't want to let it go. They feel like they are entitled to it.
Yep.
So somebody might be, not somebody might, I know people are listening and saying, but I still don't understand. Why did this happen to me? And what would you say to them? It had
nothing to do with you, and it had everything to do with them. Absolutely nothing to do with you. You were just something they were attracted to. It had nothing to do with you internally, nothing to do with your actions, nothing to do with what you were wearing, your makeup, the way your hair was done. Nothing. I promise you, you were not the cause of what happened to you. It was the individual who did these acts on you. Nothing to do with you.
I think it's so important how clearly you stated that. Just like unequivocally, no questions asked, just like it is not you.
You cannot wear the shame of what this individual has done to you. Whether you're a man, woman, it does not matter.
Yeah.
You did not ask for them to do this act to you.
Yes.
At any point in time, you did not ask for it. You cannot wear their shame. This is not your shame to be holding on to.
But Lindsay, I'm playing devil's advocate. I should have done more, right? I look back and I said no, but I should have done more.
At some point, and I'm speaking from experience, I say no, I have said no, I have said stop, I have fought. At some point, you give in because you don't want to endure the abuse, the harm. The act is going to happen sometimes. When you fight and beg and plead for them to stop, if they haven't stopped after begging and pleading and they're getting rough with you, at some point, sometimes it's easier to give in. Because then you're not enduring the abuse.
Right.
And I think it goes to the point of, would you rather show up in the ER, beaten and battered and raped? Or show up in the ER and say, I tried to fight him off. I said no. I said stop.
Yeah.
And I'm not beaten and battered. But I was hit. I was, beat up a little bit. But I surrendered so I wouldn't be bloodied and torn up and showing up here half alive.
Such a great point, because I think people are familiar with the responses to trauma of fight, flight, freeze. But we don't really always understand the appease. Why did I just appease this? And I think you spoke very well to why sometimes we just appease. And it looks like we're allowing this, but we're really trying to mitigate more extensive damage.
It's saving yourself almost.
Yes.
It's to just save any bit of what you have left almost.
Exactly. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for what you've shared so far. I can't wait to continue our conversation on the next episode.
Thank you.
Just the resilience. I mean, I have to, I know we're short on time, but I just have to say, like, all of what you've been through, and here you sit and you can talk about it. I mean, it blows my mind. The human spirit is so resilient. And you are an example of that.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more note for those of you who may be experiencing domestic violence, sexual abuse. There is, at least in Minnesota, Day One Services, day1services.org. This is a hotline. This is a place for resources for men and women. You might be experiencing sex trafficking, just kind of anything. So I just want to throw out to the crisis hotline, which is 1-866-223-1111. Again, dayoneservices.org. You can go online and chat. You can call that number. But take good care of yourself, having listened to this, and we will be back soon on the next one.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.